Welcome everybody. So Bar Liverant, that's my name. I am with Archibus, been with Archibus for quite a while, almost 10 years, with the field enablement team as a solution lead. And what we're going to concentrate today specifically is the different activities that Archibus has put together or can be used within the context of back to work specifically. What I'm going to do as a starter is just to let's go for the agenda, and then we'll talk a little bit about what is back to work, how the Archibus in general looks at it from the perspective of our utilities that we can provide, and then we'll switch from this PowerPoint presentation to the actual software and run through different sequences just to make the point. So we'll talk, like I said, a quick overview in a second. Then we'll really break down the presentation to two things. One is preparing and then activating the preparation or actually running that strategy. So we'll start with preparing your workforce to align with the organization back to work strategy. That means who do we have, how many people, when do they come in, how do you assign parameters to those individuals so later on you can assign them to location or activate different other back to work strategies that you may have. The second is preparing your space itself to align with the organization and to align with different standards that you may impose because of COVID, in this case specifically, right? Do I return people in phases? Do they come in person? Do they stay at home? Do I have different hybrids like shifts? Or do I activate hoteling or hot desk strategies that will help me, still bringing people at home in a more controlled environment? Sorry, bringing people from home to work in a controlled environment. And then we'll go into the services themselves. How do I make sure that if I have an incident that have happened, let's say somebody has symptoms of COVID, how do I report it? How do I contact trace? How do I make sure that the location that that individual was in is being cleaned in a timely manner and with the right procedures? And of course, making sure that your facility in general is more equipped to handle a back to work situation. How do I send individuals to perform maybe corrective or preventive maintenance or run condition assessment that will enhance the ability of my individual assets to perform for in an optimum situation, so to speak, in this case to increase or enhance ventilation specifically for COVID. And of course, how do I treat my staff once they are at work? Incident reporting and maybe training, PPEs and whatnot. So we're going to cover that to the degree possible today. Now, when we developed this, we were thinking about the individuals that are going to work within the different organizations, and different questions that they might have depends on the role, right? So maybe a health and safety officer will ask something like, how do I protect my employees when they return to work? How do I track? So then we're thinking about incident reporting, we're thinking about PPEs, basically we're thinking about health and safety in general. A space planner will actually look at it to say, okay, now I know that I'm going to reduce capacity because because my space does not look the same as it was before, because I can't actually bunch people all together. So how do I make sure that everybody comes in? How does a floor plan look like, right? Where would people work when they return? A supervisor might look at it, specifically from the optimal time, scheduling services, scheduling workforce, how do people interact with the facility in general? And then a craftsperson might just ask, how do I in fact do the work safely, but do the work generally? So there's a lot of things here that Archibus does already out of the box, but we're just putting it out there to make sure that you are aware of them as it is. So all those questions really come in and kind of plug into applications that in fact we already have, and some enhancement that we have done specifically for back to work, right? So environmental health and safety has a lot of incident reporting, training, and PPEs already built in. Emergency preparedness will track all the individuals that you have, send email and notification on a moment's notice, just to make sure that the people are aware of different conditions and different strategies that you guys are trying to employ. Space management of the actual space itself and the reduction in occupancy and different strategies that can be employed directly on a floor plan. Reservations have the hoteling application and whatnot, and of course maintenance and compliance management are really tied together in a way that you can then perform the work, activate workflows, and then track them in a meaningful way. So all that is already, like I said, built in and baked in within Archibus. Now, beyond that, we actually ask a lot of our users what they have heard of return to work, what is important to them, whatnot. How do they prepare specifically? There's quite a lot of questions here from how do you prepare your organization for this pandemic or back to work specifically? How likely are you to plan the future ongoing through this experience? Clearly, a lot said we are. But more importantly, and this is what I want to concentrate today, would you consider any of the following tactics to keep your employees safe? And you can see here that allowing employees to work remotely is a very big possibility that people are thinking about all the time. Enhancing clearly protocol, 60% of the respondents said absolutely. Incorporate more space between co-workers. Almost half of the respondents said sure. That seems like a common thing to do, about 44%. Bring employees back in the office in phases. Almost 2/3 said absolutely, that's a good idea. And then implement split shift schedule. Not as many, but still something to think about. So you can see there's quite a lot of strategies that are out there that people are constantly are thinking about. And Archibus can help implement those individuals. So what I'm going to do now is I'm actually going to turn back to the software and move away this. So I'm running the latest Archibus software, in this case 25.3. There are several, let me just move this, okay. Different home pages that were added, including a dynamic workplace that really connects to some of the back to work strategies that we employed. But for our purposes, it really gives us a few links here that I'm going to use as I go through. If you never actually worked with our metrics or homepage, this is a way to bring up to the front or right there to your, you know, main screen, so to speak, all the activities and all the calculations and all those individual metrics that you would like to look at, including alerts that you would like to look at immediately and have as a, you know, heads up display all those activities at your fingertips. So it's a good tool to consolidate a lot of Archibus activities in one location. And that's kind of what we're going to do over here. So so we're basically talking about first of how to prepare your employees for back to work. So for that purpose, Archibus actually created this new view that is called Mark Employees for Return to Work. And the first thing you see is all the employees that I have within my organization in one location. Now, those employees might already be in Archibus, so you can bring them in through different ERPs. But the idea is that as they come in, you assign different parameters to them that is aligned to the strategies that you are developing. So as I'm selecting those 4 employees that you see here and click on set to return to work, it gives me some additional parameters that I want to basically assign to those employees. Are those 4 that I selected always remote? Yes or no? Are those 4 that I selected have specific status? For instance, are there shift works? Are they essential? This is a free form type of field, so you can just type whatever you want. So if you have a lot of people that are essential, that you want to designate them as such, you can do that. Maybe those 4 employees return to have specific return to work information that you want to, you know, apply. Now, I actually created these kind of presentation for universities of schools specifically. So we actually created different scenarios where, for instance, the information for return to work is actually a name of a teacher, right? And the employees are quote unquote students. So Archibus can be used that way as well. But in this case, for a traditional back to work, the return to work information could be anything like shift 2 in phase 1 or stuff like that. But again, it's a free form, so you can actually come up with a strategy and then make sure that those employees, in fact, get that specific parameters. And of course, days in the office. If you are doing shifts and you would like people to stagger their arrival, you can actually give those 4 employees that I selected, let's say, in the office on Mondays, Wednesdays, and Fridays, and save that. Once you have that, you might have, right, a whole swap of employees here that have specific parameters. And what you can do then is say, show me all the phase 2 employees. So the system immediately done that at the NCO5 building. The system, of course, filters that way, that are going to come on Mondays and Wednesday. Sure. And then select all of them. And suddenly this tool that I'm presenting is also turning into a communication tool. Send all of these specific employees by these parameters specifically an email that you can edit yourself, whatever message you feel is the most appropriate, to say, please come in on this specific date, please be equipped with a mask, please, whatever it is that you feel is most important for those people, and send it out directly from this location. In the same way, you can say, show me all those employees that are in fact working from home. Let me just clean some of these parameters. And you can see that I have about 10 or 15 employees that are working from home. Excellent. So, and of course I can report directly from here, right? Send it directly to an Excel sheet or anything, and send them all an email. So in that way, it becomes a communication tool, but also a reporting tool, and also a tool that later on will allow me to seat people in the right location on the floor plan by these specific parameters. So that is the first thing that we did, is preparing those individuals to return to work. The second thing that we did is, going back to the Space Console, is taking all this information and applying it directly on the floor plan. So as I'm going and looking at the NCO5 building, which is my demo building that I'm working with, you can see the system automatically filters all the buildings that I have in the system to this one building with 5 floors. And what I would like to do is to prepare my floor plan for, for back to work. Now, there are different guidelines that are out there. Some of them are by, by international organization like the World, Health Organization. Others by American, government like CDC. Others might be by your state or by the individual companies. All those can be then applied directly to the floor plan as guidelines of how to perhaps create a floor plan by social distancing or other types of strategies. One strategy is to say, if this is my floor plan, right? This is the 4th floor of the NCO5 building. I don't want in any case to have more than 50% capacity, no matter what. So in Archibus 25.4, which is coming up in about a week, what we have done is we can actually set a target occupancy, let's say for the building, but also for the floors. So you can actually see all those floors and say, for this specific buildings, I would like you to not exceed 50% capacity. So when you actually do hoteling or you actually assign individuals to the floor, the system itself comes up with a warning to say you now exceeded or arrived at capacity, even though it's half of the original capacity of the building. So we are doing that already out of the box. Now, the second thing is social distancing, right? So one way of looking at social distancing is creating some kind of a, circle, quote unquote, around an individual desk or a seat at a desk and say, If that specific circle have radius of, let's say, 3 feet, then 2 of them touching at, at the tangent, they'll be about 6 feet apart individual. So great. So now we're basically complying with the 6 feet social distancing that is, dictated, let's say, by the CDC, or at least advised by the CDC. In this case, I actually put a radius of 4 feet, which will give me a diameter of well, a distance of 8 feet between individuals, just to be on the safe side. And then I can save this. Immediately I see here that the building itself has about 1,600 individuals that can potentially sit in it, right? So that's the total capacity, the actual capacity. But the target now is half of that, 820. And then the floors, of course, have their own target based on that. And the radius, the safe distance target, is 4 feet. That means 8 feet in actual distance between. So as I look at my individual floor plan here, and I can look at it, let's say, by, types. And in this case, I'm looking at different types that I have. Workstations are all yellow. I can actually run my social distancing circles, and you can see that with that specific floor plan that I have right now, a lot of them are actually quite safe, except a few that you see here, and they're interacting. That means that these specific, 4 feet radius circles are touching each other, so it might actually be a little bit unsafe. In the same way, I can actually show you the 5th floor, which will be a little bit more dense, right? If I'm running my social distancing little calculation that I have here, you can see that a lot of these individual workstations that I have here are a little bit intersection, and so I need to do something about it. So what we can do is then look at those individual desks and basically designate them as not available. And what it will give us later on is when I am trying to activate, that means when I'm actually assigning individual to seats, or when I'm running a hoteling application, these individual seats that are designated as not available are not actually going to appear when I'm doing the hoteling process, or when I'm doing the assign individual to seat process. Now, the simplest ways to do that, of course, is just to go to into the floor plan, just click on, let's say, this guy and this guy and this guy and this guy, open up the editing tool, and immediately here I can say this specific 4 seats for desks that I selected are not available, right? Do not use. I can also change the capacity of them to 0 just to make sure that nobody's going to use them. And and of course they are not hotelable either. Now, stands to reason that I could have done it the other way around. I could actually prepare those directly to be hotelable, are usable, and the capacity could be whatever I want. So we'll talk about it in a second. I'm going to save that as is. So in a way, if I'm actually looking at my floor plan here by status, what I see is that the red one here are actually indicates seats that should not be used, and the green one will be seats that can be used. So really what I have created here is a template of a floor plan that is, by definition, let's say the CDC definition, are safe. Now, there are, of course, a lot of other things that needs to be taken into account, like what happens when the employees are in fact moving from location to location, right? How do they actually travel between those individual desks? Do I actually create some kind of a safe passage from side to side, and all those kind of great questions? What do I do with closed offices? So they might actually intersect in terms of the circles, and it tells me it's not safe, but there's the actual wall over there. So clearly that's a condition that I might just ignore those red circles and stuff like that. So there's quite a lot of things to think about regardless, but this is at least gives me the baseline of start thinking about my occupancy and what is allowed and what's not allowed. Now, in the same way, once I'm do that, I'm actually starting to think about, okay, so at this point, I can actually activate this. And by that, I mean, how do I actually place individuals into the seats, right, by that new floor plan that I created. So if I'll just go to my occupancy view, you can see that there's quite a lot of seats here that are actually not available. Only some of them are, and I can see them over here. I can then go to my employee list directly in the same console, and select a specific field that I would like to place individuals in the floor plan by. Remember, I actually prepared my workforce already. So I have different parameters like return to work information or days in the office. So I can actually leave them right here. And as I scroll this, I can actually see the specific information right here. So I say, show me all those individuals that are coming in on phase 2. Right, so the filter, it filters it out, and I can actually see all those individuals that are coming in phase 2. So all I need to do on Mondays and Wednesdays in this case specifically, and some of them on Tuesdays, right? So I can actually filter any way I want. So I can select the individuals that I want, place them in my waiting room here, and then apply them directly to the rooms. That means just drag and drop. Right? And that's basically as simple as that. So what I'm really creating is a floor plan. Now, this assumes that, right, that all the individuals that used to sit here in permanent positions are not there anymore. Now, you can actually also create a move project, basically to say, I don't actually know 100% how those individuals, where the individuals are going to sit. I still need to think about this. And so instead of actually placing them in location, you can actually go to the view pending assignments and actually create a new move order directly from the space console. And once you've done it, let me just close this. You can actually go into the move console and start preparing or planning for that move that you're thinking by those specific parameters that we just created. That means by the floor plan that we just created, which is the socially safe, socially distance safe type of floor plan. So I'm going to look at, you can see phase 1 back to work scenario or move that I have. I can activate it, right, by just clicking on the move scenarios. And I added 2 floors to that specific scenario. You can see floor 4 and floor 5. I'm going to open one of them. As soon as I open up, that floor plan comes in. I can look at it by occupancy. So you can see that the floor plan is already assigned or is already reflecting that social distancing floor plan that I designed ahead of time. And I can take all those employees that are pending, like you've seen before, and just assign them to locations. Once I'm done with that, I can just go back to here, create a completely new scenario, right? Phase 1 back to work scenario 2, and do exactly the same thing again, maybe in a different variation, and then a third variation and a fourth variation, right? And once I'm done with the variations, I can actually go and review all my move scenarios by different parameters, by, let's say, areas by organization, or areas, occupied areas only, or areas by categories, or usables areas. So there are different parameters I can actually review that specific move. Now, when I'm done, and I think that this is the right move that I would like to execute, I can actually go to the move itself and update the move project from the scenario and run it. What Archibus will then do is we'll run work orders to all the individuals that are connected to that specific move. We'll activate a workflow that the system will follow. And when those individuals get notifications, come to the office, sit in that specific location, then their names are going to be recorded in the system as their location for those specific phases. Let's say in this case, phase 1. Right, so what Archibus allows you to do, and let me just sum up the space part here, is prepare your workforce for back to work, right? Whoever stays at home, stays at home. Whoever comes in, comes in. They can come in by phases, come in by shifts. They can come in specific days of the week. You can give them those parameters, and you can send them notifications that those strategies were employed. Then you go to the floor plan and you prepare the floor plan by those social distancing guidelines. Then you marry those two, right? You have the employees, you have the floor plans, and you put those employees to those seats by the social distancing guidelines. And you can also do a lot of planning that is by the way. That means you don't have to do it immediately on the current conditions. You can do a lot of scenarios until you find the right one and then activate that scenario. Now, another strategy that you guys can employ is the hoteling application that Archibus runs. Now, the hoteling application, and I think, let me go back to my Space Console. The hoteling application requires only really one major thing, and that designating individual room as hotelable, right? So again, let me just cancel all this. All right, so if I'm looking at my floor plan over here, there is a new view that is called hotelable rooms. And as I look at it, the system will show me which rooms are hotelable and which rooms are not. And notice here that a lot of these hotelable rooms are in fact following the social distancing that I just designed. And some of them are not, right? So we can actually, in the same way that we've done before, we can select individual rooms, right? Those, let's say 4. Look at them from the different perspective that I have, in this case, and basically making sure that these specific ones are hotelable, or in this case, not. Right? And if they're not hotelable, they're of course going to turn red, but more importantly, they're not going to appear later on for you guys when you're trying to book a room. Now, that's a completely different strategies, right? That means that maybe some essential employees were actually going to be permanently on the floor, but all the rest of those individual seats might actually be available only by booking. So once I actually prepare my floor plan for booking, I can actually go to utilities that we have, for instance, like Workplace, and which is basically a utility that can be given or provided to all the employees in the company. They can actually log in as themselves or as guests, and then book individual, in this case, workspace from the office itself. Now, what you see here, the Workplace utility that I'm presenting here is can be logged into from any device, right? It can be from your desktop at home, but it can also be from your mobile device and whatnot. And so the capabilities of interacting with your facility or with your space management apparatus in your organization has been increased quite significantly. So you can actually get that individual utility. You can go to Workspace Booking. And by the way, there's quite a lot of tiles here, and those tiles can be trimmed down to just the activities that you provide your employees. Right. In this case, Workspace Booking will be maybe one of them, specifically if you're running the hoteling, activity. You can click on that. The system automatically shows you all those individual locations that are in fact available to be booked. And you can see them right over here. Remember, we actually designed this area, and only those individual booked rooms or hotelable specific rooms are in fact appearing. On the right-hand side, there is a filter that really allows the employees to hone down on that specific area that they find that they really want to book an area by. So for instance, they're saying, well, I belong to a specific department. Can I find a room closer to the department that all the other of my co-workers are actually going to be in? And so you can actually look at individual departments on this floor. In this case, the claim departments are all in the green area. If you just do search, it will just show you just that area and nothing else. So in this case, I'm saying I would like to book this specific one. Click on book to myself or another person. In this case, it's going to be to myself. And by the way, like I said, we can absolutely do all that on a mobile device that looks like that, right? Let me show it to you again. I think I just moved it a little bit too quick. Okay, so on this side, you can actually see the way that it looks on a mobile device. In this case, on an iPhone 7 or 8. I'm booking for myself. This is how it's going to look like. This is the date that I selected, but it could be any date. I can cancel it, start from the beginning. Workspace Booking, click on it. We just move this over here, so it'll be in the center, right? I can see all the space that is available. In this case, I'm going to look on the 5th floor, right? Just like I did. You can zoom in as soon as it generates. Here we go. We're going to zoom in to see what's available. I can look at it by the actual name of the rooms, but I can also look at it I can also look at it by the different other parameters that we talked about, right? This is the date, let's say for tomorrow. More options by department. Talk about the commercial operation or the claims, it doesn't really matter. It actually show me those individual areas, but there's no booked rooms for this specific department. Let me find something that we do have. It's gonna be easier. And as I find the individual seats that I want, I just click book to myself, book, and that's as simple as it gets. Now, this specific information, of course, is going to go and be recorded. Now, what you do is when you come into the office, you're going to have a little notice directly here on your mobile device to say you have been assigned a specific desk, and it gives you the location. You find that location. A QR code might actually be on the desk itself, or just a button to say, did you arrive? And for about 30 minutes after the time that you said you're going to arrive, the system allows you, in fact, to check in. After that, if you did not check in, there's an option that the system will actually cancel your booking if you just happen not to show up at all, making sure that that individual seat is available for other people to use. Now, let me just close this. Another option is connecting that individual hoteling, the seat that is booked, so to speak, to services. So in this case, what I have here is, let's say I'm booking that specific location over here. I have it for half a day or a full day. I'm leaving. The system will automatically will activate an actual cleaning service, basically a work order that's going to come out to say that room 530A here has been used and needs to be clean, and if it's not clean, it will not be available. That means only when the work order, the cleaning work order that is being issued after the time that that individual have finished work for that day is closed, then that individual room will be available again for them. That's an option, of course, that you don't have to activate it, but it's one thing to think about, and that helps as well when you are, thinking about this whole idea of activating spaces and making them clean and whatnot. All right. Another activities that we have, and we're actually going to move from space to other things, is the way to activate or boost our services that we provide that is connected to cleaning, specifically back to work, specifically COVID. If you seen that maybe the keen of eye among you saw that there is an actual incident little tile that I added specifically to this workplace application that we have. That incident tile here is really allowing you guys or whoever it is that is running Archibus on a floor plan with maybe individual access or a guest access to report specific activities that are connected, in this case, to maybe a person that is exhibiting symptoms of COVID or left because of that. So I'm actually recording and not the incident itself, we'll talk about in a second, but the so I'm actually requesting, I should say, that a service that results from an incident, in this case, from COVID incident. So if I click on it, it automatically asks me what the issue is, right? So it's like I can just say COVID symptoms. The question is where. I can take so the reason the location here in the room was already there was because this is where I sit on the floor plan, but it might not actually be in my location. It might be somebody else, and I would just like to report an incident that happened, let's say several desks from me or on a different floor. It doesn't really matter. In this case, it's on the 4th floor, and I can actually look at it on the floor plan and say that actually happened right here. Select that location. If it's connected to equipment, I can also add the equipment, but in this case, it's not, of course. Next, if I need to take a photo with my phone and attach it to the service, I can, but I won't, and I'll just do send. What really happened here is that the system created a service request that said, there is an incident that was reported, and the workflow, the SLA that is connected, the service level agreement that is connected to it, is being activated right now, and the right individual in our organization are going to, in fact, get their specific team that is designated in the organization or outside of the organization is going to deal with it. They have the know-how of how to do cleaning on that level specifically, and of course, the contact tracing that are connected to it is also a component. If that individual seat is being designated as, not clean because somebody that used to sit there is now identified with COVID symptoms or whatnot, that means that who else was sitting around them, we need to know that. Who else might be exposed, we can do that. What is the level of cleaning we need to, adjust and also strategize. And that's something that you guys are going to do in the planning and whatnot. But Archibus definitely gives you that level of service if need be. Another thing that Archibus can give directly in the workplace is the ability to find, let's say, a sanitation station or any other equipment that you might are looking for in a specific time. So if you are clicking on the find person or equipment, you can actually say, find me sanitation station. So you can see I have a bunch of them. Some of them are on the 4th floor, some of them on the 5th floor. So if I'm looking on the one on the 4th floor, let's say this guy, it automatically tells me where that individual station is. Now that actually applies to every piece of equipment or furniture or an individual in the organization. So I can actually look for a person, I can look for a piece of equipment, I can look for a specific room, I can look for a lot of different assets within my organization. In this case, we're applying it directly into to looking for an asset that will help me with the situation. In this case, where can I find a new mask if I need to? Where can I, have a more thorough cleanup if need be and whatnot. So that's one way of doing that as well. Now, the other services or enhancement of services, so to speak, that I want to mention here is the ability of Archibus to perform. Let me just open up the system again to perform different or to I should say enhance or create new procedures to existing piece of equipment that you have that might need to perform at their optimum because of COVID, specifically ventilation system and whatnot, right? So one of the guidelines and one of the recommendation is to increase or to optimize your ventilation systems to make sure that they are also picking up different pathogens if they're airborne or anything like that, to create conditions that are more safe within environments. So what Archibus can do is, in that regard, is several things. The first thing is to actually send technicians to individual piece of equipment like air handling units and whatnot, just to assess them, to see how they're operating, how they're doing, and and thing of that nature. So if you actually go to our condition assessment application, you can actually create very quickly a project that deals specifically with assessment of those ventilation type of piece of equipment that you might have. You can, in this case, I have 5 air handling units in a specific building, so I actually generated a condition assessment by items, by a building. So you can actually see them all over here. And then I connected those specifically to an assessor. As the assessor is coming into the build to those individual, well, the assessor is basically a technician that is going out to the field to actually do the assessment work, so to speak. So they're going to actually look at their mobile app. They're going to go to to their assessment tools, and as they do that, they can find that specific assessment immediately on their mobile device, whatever it is. Find those individual pieces that needs to be assessed. In this case, they're all air handling units. Open them up and just give them a different inspection. What is the priority of them? In this case, they are mission support or environmental code, or different other priorities that they might actually want to attach to that individual asset. What is the value? In this case, it's good, it's fair, it's very good, and whatnot. What is the recommendation? You want to adjust it, you want to remove things, you want to repair it. And then, of course, you can actually attach the cost that you feel is associated with that. And you can actually have a list of what you would like to be done to that individual asset. So for instance, change all filters, right? Or change all belts. I'm writing quickly. Right, and once you actually have a full, recommendation of what you find is lacking or missing or whatnot, you can actually complete this and bring it up directly. So the management or the actual facility manager can actually take a look at all those individual those individual pieces of equipment that were assigned to that project, and then decide what to do. In this case here, what we have done is we assigned an actual work service, that means a work order, directly to that individual assessed asset. Basically to say, that now that I know what needs to be done, I can activate that assessment and actually send a technician beyond that to do the work, right? So as a technician, I can go back to my mobile app, this time not to the assessment, but to the maintenance, because now it's a work order in the system that is based on the condition assessment that I had before. It might be me, it might be somebody else. And once my list of all those work orders come up, I can actually, let me go to my work orders. You can see here that there is an air quality problem type that was activated, specifically designed for addressing assessment issues. I can click on that. I can start the timer of how long it takes me to actually complete my work. I can activate it in other ways. I can change the status, change the condition. So in a way, it's also an additional condition assessment if you need be. And also, I have a checklist here. I'm sorry about all this notification that are coming in. There are different checklists that might actually be attached to this specific work order. I can open it up and I can fill it in to make sure that all those individual requirements that are specifically designed for, let's say, preparing my air handling unit for COVID are in fact adhered to. And once I'm done, I can actually complete it and send it back to the system so my facility manager can actually see that all those activities have been, in fact, completed. So I'm preparing my organization from the mechanical standpoint, from the facility itself, for back to work, optimizing the space, making sure the ventilation system that I have is running at optimum capacity. All the filters may be replaced to specific filters that are more effective than what I had before. And I establish new assets, perhaps, sanitation station, different location, make sure that people are aware of them, where they're located, how they get to it, and also created different services that people can activate if there is, let's say, symptoms of COVID as being discovered in the organization. Speaking of which, and that's going to be our last segment, is the whole health and safety type of activities that Archibus provide as well as part of the Archibus suite. So we talked about preparing your employees. We talked about preparing your space. We talked about move scenarios by phases, move scenarios by perhaps shifts, preparing your workplace for maybe hoteled or remote working, or booking individual spaces so you can actually, tell the system when are you going to be in the office. We talked a little bit about how to look at condition assessment, and now we're going to talk specifically about how do I report an incident beyond the service that I'm requesting to go and clean a specific area. And so Archibus sustainability and risk type of application also have a whole list of applications that are dealing with health and safety. Most and foremost is one that is called health and safety, which allows you to do different things. For our purposes, there are really three things that we want to take a look at. One is how do we track incidents? That means how do we actually enter an incident into the system when we see it, and that's for global tracking. Maybe OSHA or maybe the government, maybe the state want to know just general numbers, but also the organization want to know to make sure that they can actually improve condition and locations. And by the way, those incidents are not only only related to COVID cases, but can be anything, right? Falls or burn or electrocution or anything that you find to be an incident. You can actually record directly in the system. So your safety officers can actually have a track record of what happened. And the second thing is, how do I respond to, let's say, activities like COVID? Do I need to provide PPEs to my employees to be safe in their location? If somebody comes without a mask, what do I do? If somebody has been issued an N95, when do they need to replace it? And do they get a notification for replacement? Is the company responsible for it? And if yes, how do I make the apparatus to do it? Same thing with training. Do people need to know how the symptoms of COVID look like? Do we need to understand what the CDC guidelines are? How do I make sure they do? And how do I know for a fact that they took the class, right? So there are different mechanisms to do that, but Archibus gives you the extra tools. So let's start with the track incidents. Once I actually click on it, I can actually click on Add New. And that, by the way, you can do with a mobile device as well. I'm just showing you that capability directly on our desktop. It's going to ask me what is the incident type. Now, I already had background information about this in the system, so clearly there's some homework to do, but basically, you look at the system, and between all those different other types of incidents, you might actually find COVID-19. The date of the incident, the employee affected, right? Let's say Joan. The responsible manager, if you actually want them to get a notification as well. The time of the incident, right? So 10 a.m. The manager, again, AFM. And right, and then after different parameters that you might actually want to record as well, right? the category code of the injury, the area the injury affected. In this case, it's COVID, so there's not that much to report beyond the symptoms themselves. But if it's something else, you might have a little bit more things. And the same thing with the safety officer, chemical substance, if you need be or not. You can save it and you can actually move on. And this is where the contact tracing comes in. For this specific incident, code 28, where did it happen? So in this case, they say NCO5 building, right? And then I can actually locate, at a specific floor in a specific room, right? So this is one way for me to really pinpoint that individual incident, so contact tracing can actually be a little bit clearer. I can also indicate that specific one on a drawing if I want to, right? So instead of, if I don't know exactly where that individual room is, I can actually look at a drawing and then click on a specific room. It will actually fill that room if I want to. Now, beyond that, there's also medical information that I can add, response to the incident, and of course, all the documentation can be actually tracked in the same location. Now, beyond even that, there's also response that I might want to, in fact, do. Now, remember, we talked about a service that is being activated directly from the floor by somebody with, access to the workplace utility that we just talked about 5 minutes ago. The safety officer that is using the track the incident can actually do exactly the same thing. So if somebody reported an incident and it comes in, the safety officer can automatically create a service request for the crew that is going to fix that individual or clean that individual area to be activated immediately, right? So as they do that, it will actually be a specific, work type. In this case, an incident work type. There will be an actual, you can see here, it will automatically fill the room. The incident code is being recorded, the date, the actual type, and over here you see the SLA that it is automatically activated when this service request is running, right? In this case, the response time, the completion time, and all those individual steps that are now being activated when this when this service is activated as well. And I actually showed you already how maybe a person on their mobile device will actually see that work order come in, right? They can actually go do the cleaning and move on. Now, in the same way, there is quite a lot of other types of activities that the health and safety application allows us to do. Some of them has to do with training, others has to do with PPEs, others has to do with medical monitoring and whatnot. And so there is quite a lot of information you want to add to the system. For instance, what are those PPEs you're going to deliver? What are those trainings that you're going to deliver and whatnot? But once that information is in, you can actually track those individuals by those parameters that we talked about. So for instance, if I'm looking at an individual employee like Joan here, you can see that she's got the COVID safety training that is assigned to her. She's got N95 masks that are assigned to her and the different dates to replace them, because this specific item is perishable and it needs to be replaced once a week. So you have a full date. And if there's medical monitoring that is attached to her because of different conditions, you can also see that. Now, that is part of the organization. If you want to do that, you can. If you don't, you don't. And of course, there is a very large report section here that really allow you to look at all those individuals by individual work categories and the different assigned like training or PPEs and whatnot directly to them. All right, so I'll just bring this back just to sum up all those things that we talked about today, right? So again, I'm going to bring it to And I apologize for this, but that will be all right. So we talked a little bit about preparing your workforce, right? Who are the individuals, what their parameters? How do I prepare the space for them to come back to work? And there are many different strategies that you guys can employ. Archibus can help you do that by modeling those strategies directly in our system. Is there a specific services that you can activate to help you keep the location, the site, the building more clean, and also report of different activities that needs to be addressed immediately? Archibus can absolutely help doing that. And there's a lot of health and safety activities that will help your safety officers or the organization in general to communicate better with the individuals, the employees that work there, of course, and also provide them with the necessary safety equipment to protect themselves and protect others that are in the vicinity.